A few summers ago, I decided to take a leap of faith, quite literally. Skydiving had always been on my bucket list, and on my 32nd birthday, I decided it was time to take the plunge alone. I'd spent almost 2 months leading up to the big jump practicing and getting prepared to fly solo, essentially. By the time I was committed to a solo jump, I'd successfully taken the plunge attached to an instructor twice before. As I suited up and boarded the plane, I remember having a strong mix of excitement and anxiety. My heart racing as a result of both. I realized the anticipation of going at it alone was so much more brutal. The adrenaline pumping through my veins, it was like nothing I'd experienced before. Second thoughts came flooding in, intrusive ones too, but there was no time for that. The moment had arrived. So, with a deep breath and a leap from the aircraft, immediately I felt totally weightless, soaring through the open sky. The initial rush was breathtaking. The world around me seemed to blur as I embraced the exhilarating freedom of being alone. And why is it that the moment you think this is perfect or Hakuna Matata, you're rudely reminded that's not the case? I thought everything was going perfectly until an unexpected gust of wind caught me off guard. No, off course entirely. The moment it happened, I struggled to locate my pull cord as it was ripped from my hands. I reached for the thing and pulled as hard as I could. I knew I couldn't technically pull it too early, but I could pull it too late, so I pulled, and I felt nothing but resistance. My chute had failed. Suddenly, I found myself spiraling out of control, and that weightlessness feeling was now turning into something disorienting. I wondered if I'd pass out before I hit the ground. I hoped that I would. In moments of clarity, all I could see was that the ground below was getting closer with each passing second. Panic set in, but I knew that I had to keep a clear head if I wanted to make it out of this alive. Instinctively, I reached for my emergency parachute, and I pulled the cord with all my might. The sudden jolt brought me to a halt, and my body jerked as the secondary parachute deployed. I let out the sigh of relief, but my ordeal was far from over. I was off course. Suspended thousands of feet above the ground, I had to navigate my way back to safety. In those moments of floating back down to reality, all the trivial worries and stresses seemed insignificant. I was grateful for the opportunity to experience such a rush. Especially since I had survived it. I'd eventually landed with a thud, a few scrapes and bruises, but I was on solid ground again. And call me crazy, but I continue to skydive to this day. I just carry a newfound respect for the unpredictable nature of the world. Excuse my intrusive thoughts for a moment. Please know I'm not thinking of offing myself, and I hope this question doesn't trigger anyone. But there's something I've been wondering about, and I can't really quiz my coworkers with an icebreaker like this. So, here goes. If you were to jump off a building, would you face forward or backward when you leapt? There's pros and cons for each direction, I think. Facing forward, you're given the chance to know exactly when your death will be, as the hustle and bustle of the city life continues. I'd imagine a joyous warmth would engulf the soul, reminiscent of Christmas morning as a child when the wonders of Santa Claus still exist. Maybe able to witness all that you'll leave behind. The men and women going to and from work with no purpose besides filling their pockets for a weekend distraction from reality. The imagery of your impact on the concrete will be seen by at least a few of them. The sudden carnage that lays before them is bound to be retained within their psyche. It may even be enough to change their purpose in life, ignite the inspiration they were missing, maybe not. Who knows? Or you could jump backwards. You think you'd only indulge this option on a day with clear skies in the forecast. Consider leaving early in the morning or late afternoon for the best chance of a picture-perfect sky to gaze into. It's superior in aesthetics compared to the dingy streets being the last image you'll see, but you won't know how long that image will be able to be cherished. Personally, I feel like it would force my attention on trying to soak it all in, instead of appreciating the last moment of my final artistic gesture. There's millions of actors all dancing to their own music on the world stage. Unfortunately, my husband Lisha was unintentionally in the audience during someone's final performance. I can say truthfully that the trauma he experienced by seeing it stuck with him years later, and clearly his retelling of the events haven't left me either. In 2018, Lisha is on a construction job in Lower Manhattan. He's one of the leads on this project and had to be the first one on site to unlock the gates surrounding the construction zone. On a typical morning in August, Lisha's just finished pulling the chains off the last fence at the yard. The last gate he's opening is across the street from the Deschutes Bank Center. Also attached to that same building is the Mandarin Oriental Hotel and some ultra-expensive luxury apartments. When Lisha gets the last lock, he slides the key back into his pocket while turning around. It was a clear summer morning, and as he looked up to really take in the morning sunrise, he also saw a man stepping off of the 55-story building, then falling over 750 feet. Lisha told me the man landed on the glass mark of the hotel with such force it sounded like a bomb had gone off. The impact would split the man's body in half, sending bloody pieces of him flying in multiple directions. Some even landed across the street into the construction site. Emergency vehicles shut down the whole block within a few minutes. Soon, Lisha was able to return home after relocking all of the gates in a dazed shock. When he got home, he told me what happened. I saw the small spots of blood that freckled his yellow vest. When he first came in and told me, I thought that he was lying because of how nonchalantly he had retold before going to the shower. Pretty sure he was still in shock. That night, however, I'd woken up to Lisha thrashing in bed with night terrors, jolted awake by one of his kicks to see him punching his arms violently into the darkness, or screaming. He's asleep the whole time while acting this way too. Lisha's mom told me that he used to have a sleepwalking problem in high school, but nothing close to what he was doing now. I asked Lisha what he'd been seeing in his dreams, but he either wouldn't or couldn't talk about it. 3 days later, work would call him, telling him they'd been okayed to return to the site the next day. Lisha's speechless on the phone. Then he quickly ended the call and dropped his phone onto the hardwood floor of our dining room. He then sits on the floor, and for the first time since the incident, he cries. We sat on the floor together, and Lisha told me about his nightmares, about how that morning plays over and over and over. Every night he's either in his truck getting to work or already at the last gate. And every time he sees the man plummet through the glass canopy of the hotel, the body splits into two when it hits the road. Sometimes one of the parts or both would reanimate back to life, crawling towards Lisha, dragging whatever pieces were still attached to it at the side. It's really some dark shit that I don't need to keep going further with. There's just something so wildly insane about having your life changed forever in such a brutal way by someone that you've never even met. Anyway, take care everyone, and thanks for listening.